When we think about movement in its entirety, we no doubt think about the infinite amount of possibilities that we have available. We also think about the richness of movement that we have available to us. As a dancer myself, movement is really the only way by which I can truly express myself. And I think the same can be said for many individuals. But movement is no simple one-way road. And throughout this 10 weeks with Professor Peggy Mason, she has greatly helped me to comprehend these deeper processes that are involved with voluntary movement. And as a result, I decided to choose my final project on the motor hierarchy and the types of movement we have available to us. We have three types of movement available to us. We have reflexes, we have stereotype movements, automatic type movements, and we have self-expressive volitional type movements. Reflexes can be categorized as a knee-jerk test. When you go to the doctor and he takes a little hammer and he lightly hits your patellar tendon on your knee and it automatically creates knee extension. That is a reflex. That is a stretch reflex. Another reflex is if you place your hand on a hot stove and you have to quickly remove your hand. You remove your hand within milliseconds without much conscious thought. These are reflexes. To hop over to the motor hierarchy, reflexes only involve these lower motor control centers, motor interneurons, the motor neurons, and skeletal muscles. Motor neurons are the final common pathway by which the brain reaches muscles to support voluntary movement. Stereotyped and automatic type movements are really like chewing, like walking, like postural control, even a stereotyped movement like vomiting. If you just saw someone initiating that vomiting type motion, you would know exactly what was happening because it is so stereotypical of that particular situation. So these stereotype movements are really controlled by central pattern generators. And central pattern generators are a plastic type of circuit that really sends its input into motor neurons and as well into the motor interneurons. And this is why these things do not require much conscious thought. When you chew, you don't think, open your jaw, close, open your jaw, close. You just do it automatically without conscious thought. And that occurs because of these central pattern generators that support these very repeatable but very important type movements, as I mentioned, like walking, like postural control, like standing. It does not require a whole lot of activation from the cerebral cortex. Self-expressive movements, volitional movements, occur in the higher motor control centers, the cortical motor control centers, and in the brain stem. So self-expressive movements, when it happens here in the neocortex and in cerebral cortex, these cortical motor control centers, the movement has context. And movement that has context, it creates action. And movement that creates action is imbued with meaning. It permeates it. And movement that has meaning, you can see it travels down to these lower processes, not only to the central pattern generators, but also to motor interneurons, as well as to motor neurons that support voluntary muscle contraction. Now, looking a little bit more deeply into the motor hierarchy, skeletal or motor interneurons are the final common pathway by which the brain reaches muscles to support voluntary movement. Skeletal muscles will not contract without input from motor neurons. The same cannot be said for the heart. If you put the heart in a petri dish, it will beat on its own. This cannot happen with skeletal muscles. In order for skeletal muscles to contract or stretch, they need input from motor neurons. These lower centers do not talk up to the higher centers. It is a descending hierarchy from the higher centers that talk down to these lower centers. Again, the motor neurons, and skeletal muscles can really be categorized with reflexes. They all control those reflexes. Central pattern generators, those plastic type circuits, support stereotyped and automatic movements. The brainstem motor control center and the cortical motor control centers are involved in those self-expressive volitional type movements. And the brainstem motor control centers deal with complex movement. The cortical motor control centers really deal with action movement that has context. So you can see movement is no easy pathway. Hope you enjoyed watching.